Hello, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to a discussion about Beyond the Classroom, why extracurricular activities matter when applying to highly selective U.S. universities. My name is McGreggor Crowley, and I am a counselor for IAVYs. I work with kids in high school across the world, prepping for high school and in the high school application process. I'm here this evening to kind of talk about some of the more, I would say, nebulous and subjective aspects of the college application process versus some of the more objective things related to GPA and class rank and things like that. So just a couple words before I start. We have questions that you can ask, and I'll try to answer as many as I can. And we also have kind of an agenda just to get through some of these slides as well. And then at the end, there should be plenty of time to discuss questions that we have. So just a little bit about myself before we go on so that you're like, who is this guy? Why is he talking to me about these things? I've now spent maybe 16 years in the college admissions process. For the first 12 or so, I worked at MIT admissions, eventually overseeing freshman admissions there and graduate and transfer and special student admissions and international admissions as well. That was a blast. I loved that. I also served on the Harvard Medical School admissions committee. And my daytime job is I am a pediatrician and a pediatrics gastroenterology fellow here in Boston. I love working with kids who are in your age group, and I look forward to the discussion that we're going to have tonight. First of all, on behalf of CollegeWeekLive, I want to thank you guys for your time, and let's get started. So again, today we're going to talk about why extracurricular activities matter when applying to highly selective U.S. universities. In this session, we're going to cover several different areas. We're also going to try to use some real-world examples as best as we can. First of all, we're going to talk about the college admissions process in the United States. What do U.S. universities look for? We are going to talk about why extracurricular activities matter. We're going to talk about real student examples of extracurricular activities that really stand out, like help us to understand a couple of examples so that you can maybe even imagine yourself in these situations, and maybe we can even do some workshopping at the end if we have time for that. So one of the major differences between U.S. universities and many international universities is that instead of, for example, like the Gaokao that's used in China, or I think it's the NTSE in India, in the U.S., most colleges and universities utilize what's called a holistic review, which is essentially looks at the entire applicant versus each individual subcomponent. Because schools want to admit and bring in really wonderful students to their campus. They don't want to bring in just someone who's, really good at taking tests or really good in the classroom. They want to bring people who are going to contribute to the undergraduate community. That's why they tend to look at the whole applicant. And again, it's very much not just about grades and test scores. It's so much more complex than that. One way to think about this is to put yourself in the shoes of someone who does college admissions and to try to be a college admissions officer along with me while you're thinking about these issues. So there are some objective things that we incorporate into the selection process, and those include things like your grade point average. They include your standardized test scores like the SAT or the ACT. They include things like class rank if your school publishes that, and as well, colleges will look at your course rigor, which is out of the high school offerings that your school has. Did you take a challenging curriculum and are you doing well in it, or are you kind of taking a little bit of the easy way out, hoping to get all A's by taking easier courses? On the flip side are things that are a little bit more difficult to conceptualize and also to get on paper. Those are what we might consider soft factors, such as the extracurricular activities that you participate in, letters of recommendation, which are huge here in the United States, the strength of the school, like your high school overall, like the types of students that they graduate, the essays that you write, and also demonstrated interest in colleges and universities. So many colleges here in the U.S. have so many applicants and only a few spaces that they really want to bring in students who are going to contribute to their campus, but also really want to be there. And that's why we call demonstrated interest, is how you as an applicant can show that you want to be there. The application process here, utilizing the common application, in fact, has a significant amount of space, one of the largest chunks of space devoted specifically to activity sections. And colleges will definitely ask about these extracurriculars. Right now in the common application, you're allowed to list 10 activities. You only have about 150 or so characters in which to describe these activities, and that's like spaces, periods. It's like a Twitter-length response. You get to talk about your the activities that you belong to or that you contribute to, but also how long you've been participating in those activities. When do you take part in those? Are they during the school year? Are they during the summer? Are they both? And then the amount of time that you commit to these activities. And this is something I work closely with my students on, is that you don't get a lot of space to describe stuff that you've spent really most of your life doing, and it can seem very like it's trivializing the work that you do and all the hard work that you do, but that's how the application's set up, and you have to work and operate within those parameters. Looks like, sorry, there's a little bit of a typo here, I apologize. Activities also are inquired about on the essays. This is a very standard essay, one of many essays that you'll have to answer whenever you apply to colleges, but they tend to gravitate towards how you've contributed to your local community and what types of activities that you do. So examples, and this is one that many of the Ivy League schools use, is the please briefly elaborate on one of your extracurricular activities or work experiences, and that's 100 to 250 words that you have to write about this, and you can see that you need to really like pick one that you feel demonstrates you and it helps colleges to see just who you are. This tends to be an essay where people will focus on their most important activity or the one that they feel like the most strong about. Some other examples. So that first one is taken from many Ivy League applications from Pitzer, which is a great college. They ask about reflecting on your community. How have you engaged in one or more of Pitzer's core values? This essay question really wants you to try to show that you know about Pitzer's core values, that you've done a little bit of research on it, and that you've tied in the college with your activity that you're going to describe in detail. Johns Hopkins has every year seems to have this question. Given the opportunities at Hopkins, please discuss your current interests and how you will build upon them here. Again, you need to do some exploration of the university or the college itself, and then tie that in with what you do and why you're going to be awesome whenever you get to be there as a student. This is a very standard question, so you can start to see that in the college application process, your activities and the things that you do are very important and are asked in a number of different ways. So kind of answers the question, why do extracurricular activities matter? It's because colleges don't want to just admit somebody who's, again, really good in the classroom, but once they're outside of the classroom, there's very little there. Example that we have here, this is from New York Times article with a real Berkeley officer of admissions and a real applicant who was anonymized. And this, I feel, is a kind of a tough example, but this person did not get admitted to Berkeley. It was a person with a near perfect GPA, very high SAT scores, and 800s on the subject tests in math and chemistry. And this person applied for an engineering position. like in the engineering school, which is one of the world's best engineering schools. And Berkeley's like, we got a lot of kids like this. What is it about you that's different from, that large group of people? And they didn't find much in that application, and so they ended up passing on that student. So colleges, private or public, really want very well-rounded students coming in, or students who, what I call spiky. So like they're really good, generally very good at many things, but they're very good, like exceptionally good at one thing. So they got this big spike on them. It's like, I'm a really good like rock climber, or I'm a really good research scientist, or something like that. And so it helps the colleges to kind of see you on their campus. So how do we essentially conceptualize activities, and how do we make the things that you do stand out? I think someone's asked a question here down below, which we'll address, about despite the fact that we should have interest in extracurricular activities, how many should we do? There's no real magic number here. I think really what we're looking for is a student, an applicant who, through her activities, is showing quality, leadership, depth, so long-term commitment, initiative, potential, and impact. And these are descriptors for people who might be called change agents, or who might be called, resource maximizers, or who have taken kind of an idea about a project or a group and really made it into their own. And it's such a great way to kind of show all of these qualities. And in many ways, you only need like a handful of things if you really do them in depth to show that you are a very high quality contributor to your community. I always talk about quality, not quantity. I talk about depth, not breadth. So if you remember, you only have 10 spaces on the application to write about your activities, and you may fill them all or you may not. But if you are one of these people who kind of joins something, nominally, and spends an hour there this week and an hour next month on it, are you really contributing in that? Is that really something, a vehicle for you to contribute to your community? I don't know. But if you're somebody who spends, a lot of time and devotion and heart on a singular project, and you put your all into it, I think that's really a person that's high quality. And I think that's a person who doesn't play the game, but who, she has her heart in this endeavor and wants to improve her community or improve the field that she's in her own particular way. Again, quality over quantity, definitely. With my students that I work with, one of the kind of things that they fret about is whenever they fill out their common application, they write like, oh, McGregor, I only have 8 activities I can list, not 10. And I'm like, you're done. That's it. You've listed what you feel comfortable with and what you want to tell people about. And if you just kind of add stuff to it, it's like the fluffy stuff. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't make you look any better. And in fact, it might look like you're kind of like, puffing yourself up in order to be a better applicant. I also kind of want to draw out here some issues related to stuff that you don't think that we want to hear about on the admissions, and on the admissions side of things. And that's stuff like babysitting, taking care of siblings, taking care of parents, a sick relative. I need to hear about that. I remember one year we had this applicant to MIT who, she was phenomenal. She had like the best letters of recommendation. She did so well academically and really wonderful test scores. But her activity section was completely blank. And we were allowed, the MIT application allows you to list 5 activities. And she listed 0. And I was like, was this an error? Was this like a computer error? So I called her up and I said, hey, I'm McGregor from admissions at MIT. I wanted to find out about, was there a computer error that occurred before when you submitted your application? And she's like, no, I don't do anything. I go home after classes are over because I have to like take care of my two siblings, and I help them with their homework. I cook dinner for them. I put them to sleep. And my mom comes home from her job because that's whenever she works. She works really long hours, and so I have to take care of my siblings. I'm like, you got to tell me about this. I need to know about this. Otherwise, it looks like you missed out on your application or there's an error on it. So I ended up admitting her because she's just such a high-quality kid who her community was her family, and her impact was on this, small community of like 4 people, community nonetheless, but it was a tremendous impact. And I think that it's important for you to understand that there are things that you do that you think other people don't care about, but very much we do care about them. Let's see. Rachel says, what if you began a large project late in your sophomore year and it's filled with a lot of potential? Would this affect the long-term commitment? I love this question. I think this hits on a number of things, and this is Rachel. You've really touched on several aspects here. The quality over quantity. Sounds like one major activity, and it sounds like there's depth and an extensive involvement potential here. If it's your own project, or you've taken something, you've like run with it, just pour your heart into it. Every year it should be bigger and better, I feel. It shouldn't just be like, the same thing every year, redoing it. I feel like if you put time into it and you put your energy and your soul, every year should be even bigger and better, or more of a contribution. An example of this is a student that I worked with who started just like general tutoring, but then really turned it into essentially like a pretty large business with a couple dozen people who worked with this applicant on her tutoring company, and really had a massive impact on just her local community with regards to mathematics and programming tutoring. And she was a phenomenal applicant. She did very well in the college application process. But she started early, Rachel, and she built it up year over year and kind of like developed it and expanded it and recruited and made it even larger as she progressed through her years. And she was very successful as a result of that. It did take a lot of time and a lot of devotion, but I think she got identified as one of the top applicants to one of the top universities in the world. And I think they called her out on it, and it was really nice to see because I know that she worked so hard to get that. Let's see. So I think, this is kind of one of these like real world examples. I've already given you a couple real world examples, but let's talk a little bit about like a fictional student. Student applicant likes piano, does taekwondo, and plays chess. When you really ask her what she's interested in doing, like she spends so much time playing the piano, she goes to taekwondo because her parents asked her to go to taekwondo, but her heart is in chess. She loves it, and she can't get enough of it. And when I meet with my students, like for the first time, I really make them do a catalog of everything that they do, and then I say, do you love it or not? And it's surprising for many parents to hear that some students don't love the thing that they've been doing for the last 14 or 15 years, and in fact they hate it and they never want to do it again, and instead they want to do something completely different. I feel that's a very important thing to identify early on. Why are you doing something you don't want to do? Why are you like investing your heart and your soul in it, and your time? Your time is so valuable. Why are you investing that into something that you have no love for? Pick the things that you love and dive into them, because you will do so much better in those endeavors if you really and truly thoroughly love doing them. And that's something I see day in, day out with my kids, that if you love something, the end result of that love and the time and the devotion is so much better than just like going through the motions of something that other people ask you to do or you feel compelled to do. So for this particular student, I would, recommend something along the lines of identify like what it is about chess that you like. Why do you like it? You like the problem solving. You like the algorithmic aspect of it. You like the possibility of interfacing with like an artificial intelligence system that can help make you a better chess player or match you move for move. And so can you weave programming into it? Can you, do you like teaching chess? Do you like competitive chess? And then just really kind of like develop these interests and these facets along of the interest even further. This is where I feel brainstorming is really important, is trying to find out like what it is about this particular thing that you love, that you really like, and then just be as creative as you can. Use your friends, use your family to kind of say, okay, well, I like chess. What are some things that I can do with it that help me to explore it even more? Again, really only join activities you're truly interested in. Be fully engaged and enthusiastic. One of the big things that I try to have my kids do is to make an impact on their community. How, like, here's an example, right? How can you make an impact on your community if you love playing chess? I think that's a valid question. That's a question I was just asked like 2 months ago. And my answer was, how do you think you can make an impact on your community playing chess? We gave this some back and forth together to say like, well, I like teaching chess. I feel like what I can do is I can go into the middle school or the elementary school that's right next door to me and get some time from like the second grade teachers to go and like teach kids chess and teach kids moves in chess and help them understand like planning ahead and like developing executive function. I was like, great, start off with that, see how it works. Can we expand it? Can we turn it into something really interesting related to this? Let's see. Jasmine says, I've been doing an internship since 8th grade, but academics have been a little more difficult to balance along with it now that I'm coming towards my junior year. Would it impact my application in a negative way? Jasmine, this is an excellent question, because here I am asking you guys to spend a lot of time on these extracurriculars, but that's your nighttime job. Your daytime job is to be an excellent student. And so as you progress through high school, you're expected to juggle more things, and you're expected to like get great grades, but also to, impact your community or do these types of extracurriculars in a way that has an impact. And it does require a lot of time. I would caution you, Jasmine, against doing anything to an extent that it takes away from your ability to be an excellent high school student. Your academics are first and foremost the most important thing about you. And if you find that your extracurriculars are cutting into your grades, that's a bad thing. I'll give an example of this as a student that I met who had applied to and was summarily rejected from Harvard University in the early action period 2 years ago. This person was very involved in his community. He had founded a nonprofit organization. He was involved in debate. He had hosted TED Talks. He had great test scores. In person, he was very poised, very articulate. And then I started to look at his transcript because they asked me to kind of consult with them and find out what it was that made this really stellar kid get rejected. And I noticed that as his activities came up, his grades came down, and he was having difficulty keeping all of the balls he was juggling in the air. And the balls that fell were the ones that were academic. And that has to be, you have to prioritize academics, Jasmine. So my suggestion for you would be to kind of find balance here. And if you do find that it's taking way too much of your time, bring someone else in to help you with that, like a friend who also wants to get involved, and then delegate to that person, or cut back on it, or learn to be more efficient in different ways, like different ways of organizing and setting up your calendar. But the bringing other people in and helping other people to like become like leaders as well is a great way for you to like offload some of that work onto other people and allow them to have something really nice for their college applications as well. All right. Victoria asks, if I were to devote much of my time to an activity or a hobby, would I have to have awards or own a company to prove my passion? Another great question. I don't think so, Victoria. I do think, though, sometimes, these intersect with awards. For example, like research. Like if you spend, a couple years doing like a labor of love research project, like on fruit fly wing development or whatever, you can use that to submit to science fair projects and get some awards for it. If you have an opportunity to turn your idea into like a nonprofit organization, that can be an expensive undertaking to found, like in the United States, like a 501c3 organization, like a nonprofit organization. You don't have to do that. You can just found an organization and say you founded an organization. But the rewards or the awards or the ribbons at the end of the day might make you feel better, but they're not required. I would, though, keep an eye out for opportunities to tell people in different ways the type of achievements that you've done. And if you're doing things like research, to submit your research for those types of awards. We'll talk about that in a second. Or to, like if you have an organization that's had like a positive impact on your community, there are scholarships out there for kids who do that. And you have to write an essay about why you did this, and et cetera, et cetera. But if you get that scholarship, that's like a nice nod in your direction that all that hard work you've done is, other people are starting to recognize. Let's see, there's just a couple other questions I'm going to get to in just a second, guys. Let's see, this is a huge one here. So this is like kind of a general slide that I've said a bunch of things are. I love the saying, if you can't find it, found it. I have one student who I really love working with this kid. He's super, super nice. And he loves mathematics, and I was like, I met him when he was in 9th grade, and I said, tell me about your school's interests in mathematics. Are there organizations devoted to mathematics? And he's like, no, my school doesn't have a math club. This is like a pretty big high school, like 1,600 people, and his school did not have a math club. And I was like, so you love math, your high school doesn't have a math club, and you want to help other people learn about math and love it as much as you do. If you don't see it, make it happen, like actualize it, find it and do it. And so he founded his math club, the math club at his high school. There's over 100 people in it. He founded the computer science club at his high school as well, because there wasn't one of those. And this is a really lovely way for him to have an impact on his community. And just kind of going back to that idea of only just do those things that you love. Don't be a jack of all trades, or a master of none, or a serial joiner. Again, those 1 hour a week clubs where you're just sitting there taking notes, you got to do something more than that. Let's see. Okay. I heard that colleges are veering. This is a question from Sharon. I heard that colleges are veering away from service, citing it may show the family can write a check to have his or her high schooler participate in these service-oriented expeditions. I hear they weigh summer work over service more so. Super interesting question. Let me just see. I think I might be talking about this coming up. I'll just answer it really quickly, Sharon. So there are things that you do that you can join where you pay money to go to like another country and do a service project there. I think we kind of know what those are from the admission side of things. I feel though service though means a lot of different things, and so service I would say is more like community service or like contributing to your community. And although there are ways that you can pay to do that, we know those, and I feel like I would say it's actually much easier, and I feel much more rewarding to kind of create this service project on your own design. An example of this is a student who volunteers at this like center for this after school center for like lower income elementary kids. And she went there just because it's like right next to her high school, and she's like, hey, can I be of any assistance? And they're like, yes, our printers don't work. Can you work with us on this? And she spent hours and hours and hours, and she finally got all the printers to work. But then she found that like all the technology was networked incorrectly and was old and was just non-functional, and stuff that they had paid good money for was being unused. And so what she said is, she said, hey guys, are you okay with me coming by like 3 or 4 hours every week, just like trying to help bring you guys into the 21st century? And that turned into essentially like, not like they didn't pay her to do that, but like kind of a part-time volunteering job. And she's beloved there. And this is an organization that when it comes time for college, the college application, they're going to be writing a letter of recommendation for her. And it's going to be wonderful. They're going to be like, she had a really strong, an amazing contribution to our organization. And that's service, Sharon. I feel that's service. Going and like, you know, building a latrine in a developing nation, I feel is also service. But you better very much like doing that, or like instead of like going and building a latrine, go and try to find out what are the problems that the people are facing, and then help them to develop like a prototype for a technology or a design or a plan that's going to help them with that. All right, so a couple topics to go over really quickly. Leadership. When you start in an organization, your freshman year, your ninth grade year, you start kind of at the lowest level. Every year you should be looking to increase your contribution to that organization. You don't have to be president of every organization that you're part of. I think also that dilutes your ability to contribute and lead that organization. I would pick strategically about those organizations that you're interested in leading, and then aim for those. I would also think if you're like one of the younger students, like a 9th or 10th grader, to look at the leaders of your high school and say, what do I admire about them and why, and what would I change about how they do things, so that you're kind of always constantly asking yourself, like, how can I be as effective as a leader as I can, and to incorporate other people's experiences into that, and try to be the best leader that you can be, and maybe your school's seen in quite a long time. Let's skip over this one. Sorry, guys. Long-term commitment. We already talked about, you know, depth versus breadth here. This is an interesting example. This is a kid who was a swimmer, and this student loved swimming, loved water polo, did Model UN because like his parents told him to, and did debate because I think his parents told him to as well. Kind of like the policy aspects of those, but was much more interested in like being in the pool, and like for this particular student, like swimming in the ocean. It's one of the things that came out of this brainstorming session was, what do you love to do? And the student loved to be in the water, loved clean water, loved like seeing other people enjoy the water. And we said, well, how do we take your kind of the things that you've liked about Model UN and debate and bring them into what you truly love, which is like the environment? And this person started policy work related to like water safety and water quality, and used the skills that they developed in Model UN and debate in order to learn how to craft policy, but also how to be a really strong advocate, and to use his voice to like advocate on behalf of something he felt impassioned about. And overall, whenever it came time for him to apply to colleges, he was seen as this person who was very, very strong advocate of water quality and water safety, and kind of like born like a water baby, like someone who was in the water all the time. And it was like a really lovely theme to see. Let's see, because I think there is. If I just join an extracurricular activity after school for a year and only a year, do you think it's still valuable for a college application? I think that's, you know, that's that's a good question. I'm going to change your question. I'm going to say, if I just join an extracurricular activity after school for a year and only a year, do you think it's still valuable for me as a person? Like, should I do this? Is it worthwhile? That's a very personal thing. Do you enjoy it? Don't just do it because you think other people want you to do it, because we can kind of see that in the applications and the amount of time people commit to it. And if it looks perfunctory, that you're just doing it because you feel it needs to be done, then it's hollow, right? It's like a waste of your time. And I think it shows in the application that it could be a waste of your time. I would say really do those things that you love and that make you a stronger person as a result of it. Just kind of like holding your nose and joining an activity for a year just to do it to me is wasted effort on your part. Let's see. So this is a big thing for me, is initiative, and getting students to understand that you can walk in footsteps that have already been walked in before, and like go through the motion, and like, yes, I was class representative, and that I was class treasurer, and then I was student council treasurer, and then I want to be student council president next year. And it's like, okay, well, that's a pretty routine way of moving up through the ranks of an organization. But why are you doing it in the first place, and how are you going to make it better than it's ever been through your involvement with it? And so you can demonstrate initiative through already established mechanisms, such as like these existing positions, like student council president, for example, or you can do your own work. And I think especially for students who are interested in like careers in business, this is huge. This is very important. In fact, business schools business like undergrad schools like Wharton or Babson ask this: how did you show initiative? How did you show leadership? And so for my students who have a strong interest in business, this is very big. We have to work on this. This is something we always have to work on. Is to be somebody who founds, who leads, who organizes, who improves. This is a huge thing, especially for business-oriented students, for really anyone in general. All right. There's a question from Clifford, and Clifford says, what if the varsity sport you enjoy blocks out time for those clubs, preventing you from being intensely involved with clubs and activities? Great question. So Clifford, one of my favorite parts of my role at MIT was I was the person who oversaw athletic recruitment as well in the admissions process. And we know that you guys work really hard, and some kids just spend all of their waking hours in the pool or on the court or on the field or training or running, you name it, and it doesn't leave a lot of time for other activities. It's perfectly okay. I think the advice I would give you is there are avenues inside those sports to do things like build leadership and build initiative. An example would be like developing a training program for the 9th graders who are interested in joining the soccer team, for example, and working with your coach to like train those people and to like get their like cardiovascular fitness up so that you learn about education and like sports education, sports medicine. You learn leadership techniques as well. You've created something on your own. You're like working to mentor younger people, and you're improving your sports team in the process. I feel find those types of ways, those avenues to show your initiative in your established things that you do, like a captain of a team, for example, or someone who does like strength training coaching for their classmates, or like the person who organizes team dinners, right? All of those things help to show initiative. So I think there's many ways for you to do that. Let's see. So this goes back to a question I think Rachel asked. And she asked a follow-up question about what high school awards stand out. It's nice to have external validation on the stuff that you do, right? It's nice to like know that you're not operating in a vacuum, and that all of the hard work that you're doing is either being, recognized as like contributing, or that people understand that you are putting in a lot of work in order to get all of this work done and to lead this club or lead this organization. As I said before, there are some awards that really stand out. The Intel is one of them. I think it's got a new name now. Google Science Fair. Siemens, I think that's also changing its name. These like science fair, science competitions are a great way to have kind of the stamp of approval that the research that you've done is really top level. And even just applying to it, I feel is like a nice thing, because then you like learn about like the writing up of an abstract, the writing up of a science project. You may win an award you never thought you would win. Other things that I feel like awards, just to answer this question specifically, are many schools pay attention to things like music awards, or to like if you've done well in things like the science Olympiads, or like physics or chemistry or biology Olympiad, math competitions, poetry publications. If you won awards for art, again, these are awards, right? So the other thing that you can do is, many people who I have a student who loves playing the harp. She's a top level harp player, and I know she's a top level harp player. But there's not a lot of competitions for harp players. She's in them already. But her way of showing colleges how good she is with it was to create a music portfolio, so that she could show with her instrument how well she played. And so this is also another way for you to like get acknowledgement of all the hard work that you do. Jasmine says, I do theater workshop, and for the first time we moved on to semifinals. Would extra practices or actually attending the workshops be extracurricular? Yes, I think that's fine. I do think it's like mostly extracurricular is stuff that's like not science, math, health class, English class, history class. So I do think that counts as extracurricular. It sounds like you're really good at it, and it also sounds like I kind of liken it to like a muscle. Like, right, you can train a muscle and you get really strong with it. And acting is one of these things that is like a muscle. The more you practice, the better you get at it. It sounds like you're getting really good at it, Jasmine. Let's see. I don't know how to pronounce your Anjali. For the first 2 years of high school, I was in a sport that took up all my time, and I wasn't extremely interested in it. And I'm finally doing what I'm interested in. But how do I prove it to college that I'm interested when the first 2 years I wasn't? This is a great question. Show you love it. Show you love it by like embracing it, bringing it in, making it your own, doing something with it that's extensive. Like, use the time that you would have devoted to had you continued the sport to this new thing, and you get to talk about it in your applications, right? Remember those essays that are there. There's also like a 650-word essay that the Common Application asks, and you can bring your extracurricular activities in there. An example of this is some kids will talk about research. Some kids, I remember this one girl who was very interested in type 1 diabetes research because she had type 1 diabetes, and she talked about her nonprofit related to it that she had started that was very personal. And it wasn't something that she had started 4 years ago. It was something she started as a junior, and then she like really focused on it and like turned it into a really lovely organization. I didn't know how large it was, but you could tell that she spent considerable time on it, and she documented as well, which I think pays off. But I think that's a great way for you over the next 2 years to really show colleges that you enjoy what you're doing. Is, find avenues for you to really do whatever you want with the organization, make it yours. A named leadership position, I think, is excellent, right? But if you want to found an organization related to it, if you want to take an existing organization and like take it down a new pathway, I think that's a great way to show that you love it. And you certainly write about it. When you write about it, you could say that you love it too. The words that you use in your essays, I feel, would be helpful for that too. So since we're on the awards, Victoria says, should I devote time and effort to a project or competition in a subject that I do not know I will major in, i.e. compete in a math competition if I have not decided to major in maths or science? Yeah, definitely, right? I think that's fine. I think, only a few colleges out there make you commit to your major right whenever you apply. Most colleges like MIT, the Ivy Leagues, every single liberal arts college I can imagine, wants you to come into the university to see what the different programs are, and then to use with an educated mind to pick that major that's perfect for you. And they don't want you to be like, oh, Victoria is doing all these math competitions. Why isn't she applying in math? No one asks that question. They're like, oh, great, Victoria's must love math, and she's very interested in English. And what an interesting combination! It's going to be a very, very different type of English major if we decide to admit Victoria, and it adds spice to the mix. I think it's a good thing. Let's see. There's some questions. You guys have some general questions which I can answer at the end about objective questions. So I'm not neglecting you guys. I'll answer them all. I just want to kind of weave in the ones that are pertinent to the pages that I'm on. For community hours, is it best to do things at your school, for instance, help call ball games, help coach younger athletes, or to actually go out in the community and volunteer for Autism Speaks, etc.? I know we have to have 100 hours, but which is best to do? And this is Hiram, or Hiram, sorry. I don't think there's one that's best to do. I think you do the one that you like to do, right? We don't assign a value or point system to Hiram's going out to the community and not, outside of his high school, so let's give him 100 points, but then Billy is doing the same thing, but in his school, let's only give him 10 points. No one does that. They want to see that whatever you focus on, you're doing an excellent job with it. Remember, it's not like there's a magic formula. It's whatever you do, you need to do well, and you devote time to it and devote your heart to it. And it could be in your school, it could be in your community, and it's kind of el mismo, it's the same, right? Another question kind of on the awards section, then we're going to move on. I got first in my region and fourth in the state, but I didn't get to Intel. Also, I was only an alternate at the chemistry Olympiad. This is the end of my junior year, so what can I do before college apps to prove I'm good? I think you already have. So college applications are going to ask for these things, right? And so even if you're like that step right before that next step, or you're like a runner-up or something, that's still excellent, right? And so I think you need to document, record all these, remember all of them, write them down on a document or email them to yourself so that whenever it comes time for college applications, you can pull them up and use them. All right, let's move on, guys. This is a huge thing. So summer times. Summer needs to be constructive. If you're going into your 9th to 10th grade summer, that's fine. That's the one that no one really cares about. It's the 10th to 11th grade summer that's important. And most important out of all the summers is the 11th to 12th grade summer. Most of my kids will do a stepwise thing, right? So their 9th to 10th grade summer, they'll learn programming, for example, or they'll learn basic science laboratory research. And then the next summer, they'll go and they'll work in a lab, or they will, start a very basic programming project that's their own design. And then the next summer, they have all this experience under the belt, and they'll be able to go into a really lovely university, maybe their number one university, and they'll be able to do research there, and have a letter from a professor at that university in their application whenever they apply to colleges, and that's very, very weighty type of letter that they only got because they invested the last 2 summers in that stepwise progression to be a competitive applicant for an internship for the junior to senior summer, and then to use that whenever it comes time to apply to colleges. There's a bunch of different ways to do this. You can do these a lot for free, like edX and Coursera are 100% free. It's a great way. You can learn R programming. So the letter R is a programming language, and it's phenomenal for statistics. No one in high school is studying R, zero, zilch, none. And I make my kids study R. Because no one's doing it, and it's so important. And these kids get great internships because they're like, what? You're a high school student, you know R? Come on in, right? No one in my lab knows R, so you're going to be the one who's going to be teaching us. And they can contribute in some really great ways. And the way that they got to that was that they planned a strategic summer and a productive summer, and it became something that built on itself year over year. Things like RSI are very competitive, right? RSI is more competitive than Stanford to get into. And it's very political as well. They'll take kids from, states because of senators funding the RSI position, but they'll turn away like even more qualified people from other states that have fewer positions paid for. It's a very political organization. But there's many, many, many organizations that are out there. I try to steer my kids away from them because the applications are really, 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 really long, and it's during the tough time in their junior year. And my kids get research positions just by reaching out to professors. Like they pick a university, they find a professor, they email that professor, and they go and they research at that university. It works most times. I think it can sometimes require a lot of time and outreach, but it's hard work and you got there on your own merit, and it's a great opportunity for you. Oscar says, I have an 8-week paid research internship at the Office Naval Research Lab. Excellent. I'm doing work experience co-op through the local community college for the comp sci work I'll be doing. Excellent. Plus, I'll be doing football, physical education classes with the team. What are your thoughts about STEM and sports? I think that's an excellent question. I think there's a lot of overlap. Orthopedic surgery is a huge overlap. Devices like device design, like artificial knee design, or I always thought about like these chest plates that pitchers can wear in baseball, because there's like these accidents that can happen where a kid throws a ball and the ball gets hit really hard and hits people in the chest and can put them into a particular type of arrhythmia, and it can die from it. And I feel like that's a huge opportunity for kids to like design like stuff that's going to impact the lives of other people. Like, and if they're baseball players and they design this, it's kind of like a really nice way to like show, hey, I'm a really great baseball player, but also look at me, I'm doing something inventive and cool, and I'm protecting other baseball players as well. So I think there's a lot of overlap there, Oscar. Okay, there's a lot of questions. Someone says, what is something you recommend to do during your sophomore to junior summer? Most of my kids are in research labs during that summer. And if they're not, they are doing something they're like doing an independent research project of their own design. It's oftentimes research, because I want them to be in a great lab in that junior to senior summer. And so building on that, the only way to do that is to have like good street cred for research. And that's the way to do that, is to do research in that that sophomore to junior summer. When you're reaching out to a professor, would they ask you to provide qualifications, submit an application to be able to work with them? Potentially. I think you answer that question in your emails to them and say, here are my qualifications. I oftentimes will require my students to get a letter of recommendation from one of their teachers, and then they'll say, oh, in the email to the professor, they'll say, Miss Jones, my AP chemistry teacher is serving as a reference for me. I have a letter from her for you if you'd like it. I've attached my CV to this email. I greatly look forward to talking with you about a possible research position here. Another question, how important are the university programs? I got into Harvard's summer program, but it's really expensive, and a lot of people say it's just so colleges will gain extra money. I kind of, in some ways, agree with that. I think the classes are high quality. I generally think that you already spend enough time taking classes in the school year, and so how much fun is it to like take more classes over the summer just because you think it's going to look good in the college application process? I would much rather have you do something of your own design. Or some downtime, because those are very expensive. It's like Stanford's like $15,000 for the summer, and who can afford that to take 2 classes that are like may not count or like translate into college credit? All right. This kind of harkens back to one of the questions earlier about pay for service things. There's also like these paid team tours or language immersion programs or summer camps. I actually kind of like summer camps for kids. If you're like a counselor in training, I think that's a great opportunity for personal development. I think there's a lot of organizations out there that take advantage of kids in their nervousness and wanting them to pay money for something that looks good on their transcript. And so if you're invited to something and you're like, okay, they're like, congratulations, you've been, admitted to this program. It's only $6,000 and it's 3 days and it's in Boston and we really think you'd love it. That's a lot of money for that program. It's just like, you could spend $6,000 on a ton of other things out there. So just keep an open mind about those things. So David says, why so focused on labs and research? What if my kid or any kid is not into that? David, it's a great question. So most of my kids are STEM-focused kids. It's not that I force them down that pathway. It's that they kind of choose to work with me because that's my area. I have a number of kids as well who aren't interested in that. I have a young person who's very interested in photography. And so we use the same kind of approach that we use for professors for things like that. So an example of this would be like a photography internship, like reaching out to a professional photographer or an artist and saying, hey, here's my portfolio. I'm super interested in really learning the field and learning the art. Is there an opportunity for me to volunteer with you, to intern with you and help you and help me at the same time? So David, it's not that it's I'm focused on research. It's that this approach is very similar kind of template, whatever you do and whatever your interests are. Let's see. So, and I have 5 minutes to answer all these questions. In conclusion, it's about quality, do what you love, make an impact, choose wisely. All right, so let's go down these questions. What is one big main thing that admissions offices look for on the application? Academics, that you did as well as you could in as tough of classes as you did. And then the second thing are letters of recommendation. International kids are sometimes at a disadvantage for this because their teachers don't write such lengthy letters. My guidance for the international kids is you can find copies of American style letters of recommendation on the internet. Bring those to your teacher and show her or him this is what American colleges are looking for. Not he did well in my class, thank you, Mrs. So-and-so. They need more context and more in-depth. Help them to help you. So academics, letters of recommendation, essays, those are the big guys. And then activities as well. Which we spent the rest of the time talking about. Does school look at weighted average or unweighted GPA? Actually, it's really interesting. It depends on the school. They look at, and some schools will even recalculate your unweighted GPA with weighting. The Ivy League has to do that. It's part of their policy. And they will recalculate your GPA using their own internal weighting systems. I think they want to see a kid who has a 4.0 taking the super easiest classes ever and a kid who has a 3.8 taking the most challenging classes ever. I think that's pretty obvious that we would be interested in the kid taking the more academic route. And even if there's some B's in there, still taking some academic risks. So Sudha says, if you had an older sibling who had a unique academic focus, a one-of-a-kind hook, and was accepted to half a dozen Ivies in Stanford, would the younger sibling benefit from the same academic focus, i.e. hook, or does it work against you? Do you enjoy it, or are you just doing it because it worked for someone else before? If you enjoy it, then yes. If you are doing it because it worked for someone else before, they are living their lives, right? They worked that to their success. You find your own thing and work that to your own success. Also, colleges have a way of remembering their applicants. So it may be Sudha's sibling did all this stuff before, and now, Sudha's doing it. What's the deal here? Is this an original applicant or someone who's just following in the footsteps? Oscar says, I'm interested in doing a gap year after high school. Specifically, I'd like to spend a year in South America, immersing myself in language and culture. I was turned on to Spanish on a mission trip to Nicaragua with my youth group. Ultimately, I like to focus on physics and CS and see language as a hobby, personal passion. Thoughts? Oscar, I like your interest in Spanish and foreign languages. I would say, why don't you start looking at linguistics and the intersection of linguistics and programming, like artificial intelligence, machine learning, and linguistics would be a great area for you to focus on. An example of this would be how do you design software that's going to be really effective to teach people how to learn a language or learn Spanish, here's a low-hanging fruit is do programmers who speak native Spanish program differently than people who, speak native Mandarin, a different way of structuring sentences? Is the programming structure and the programming habits of these two different language speakers similar or different? Focus on stuff like that. Try to intersect the two in a creative way. Bala says, following up on the earlier question, is there a digital filter on academics for your application to be considered? Does 3.9 versus 4.0 meet a big difference? So I'm going to interpret this as, is there like an automatic cutoff for certain GPAs? No. Some schools kind of really cut off the lower end, like the super low end, and then only focus above that. But most schools, again, utilize the holistic application process, looking at all aspects of your application. If a lot of kids from my high school are applying to the same prestigious university, are there a limit to university sets, or do they strictly look at the individual? They look at both. They're not going to admit everyone from your high school. They are going to admit whoever they want, and there's not usually typically a cap, but they're probably going to take the best kids who are applying from that high school. How important are community service hours to colleges? I think we answered that. They're very important. Any thoughts? Hispanic and first gen. I do math lab in Python, which helped with my ONR paid research internship. Sorry, Oscar, I don't know what you're talking about there. What if I'm not that great with a computer? Are there any free classes I could take? Yes, edX, Coursera, Code Academy, all super free. Go look online. Just Google free programming classes and you'll find them. Do you have an opinion about going to small liberal arts school for physics versus large research university? Go and see what they're like in person and see if you like them. What do you think about Oxbridge summer program with the interest in business program? I do not know, Oliver. What are some summer activities for architecture? Cornell's got some great programs. You can go and study those at Cornell. That's a tough competitive program. I do your own design. I'd like go and take pictures, like make your own models, make your own like maquettes or whatever they're called, and like catalog them, like become a better artist, because that's really going to help you out with architecture programs. Do you do any pro bono work? We do. You have to contact us. And do you have any contact info that we can have if we have any other questions in the future? Yeah, you can email, you can just tweet us at IvyWise. All right, guys, have a good night.